Good morning, everyone. I have ice cream today, and also today I'm going to be teaching you a fairly accurate, abridged history of my favorite band, the Beatles. That is cold. Back in 1957, John Lennon, one of the main four members of the Beatles, was all like, ooh, I want to create a band, let's create a band. So he created a band with all of his classmates at his school, at the Liverpool School for the Arts. I don't know if that's the exact name. And he called it the Quarrymen. John met Paul McCartney, in 1957, shortly after he founded the Quarrymen. And he met George shortly after. But it wouldn't be until 1962 when Ringo would join the band. In fact, the Beatles' drummer up until 1962 was a man called Pete Best. And Pete Best was a friend of Lennon's who was the only one he could find that owned a drum set. There was yet another Beatle that we haven't talked about. His name is Stuart Sutcliffe, and he died of a brain hemorrhage in 1962 before the Beatles ever became famous. Before the Beatles were famous, they performed in Hamburg, Germany, on a strip of road called the Reeperbahn. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation a little bit there. They apparently worked like 15 hours a day just straight performing and took this drug that would just keep them performing. This all ended, however, around the beginning of 1963 when they released their first single in the United Kingdom called Love Me Do. Then after that they released a bunch of other singles that were like pretty successful in the UK, but nothing that really cracked the United States. That is, however, until they visited the United States in February of 1964. And then after that, in 1965, they released an album called Rubber Soul, which was considered really revolutionary at the time. Then in 1966 came the equally mind-blowing Revolver. But in 1967, the Beatles finally showed their true colors with an album considered by many to be the greatest of all time, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I could make an entire video on just that one piece of music, but I'm not going to because I don't want to bore you guys. However, up until this time, John Lennon was considered the default leader of the band. Paul McCartney kind of rose in the ranks, I guess, and he was the main leader of the band for Sgt. Pepper, which is why it's radically different from the rest of the albums that the Beatles had produced prior. And this shift in the Beatles, I don't think they ever truly recovered from, because after that, what album came after that? The White Album? That album was mainly just the four Beatles not working together really, and just working on their own stuff. And this was a problem because the Beatles are really good together. I'm sorry, I don't like the White Album, really, to be honest. There are a couple good songs like Happiness is a Warm Gun and Rocky Raccoon, but other than that, it's just eh. And then I don't even know how many albums were released between the White Album and Abbey Road. But early in 1969, Paul was noticing that the band was starting to splinter apart. So he was like, guys, we just have to get back to our roots, get back to where we belong, and we can fix this and become that core group that we were back in the early 60s. See, this would have been a fantastic idea if all the Beatles just were like not that. So instead of going back to their roots, they decided instead to go out on a high note, and that's what Abbey Road tried to be. But Abbey Road was not their last album. Let It Be was, and Let It Be was from the early 1969 sessions, where they were trying to get back where they belong, you know. But that didn't happen back then, so they made Abbey Road. And then Phil Spector, who was a pretty famous producer guy during the 60s, came in, and John brought him in, I believe, and he just took what he could from the early 69 sessions. Shut up. And there you have it. The Beatles' history explained under 5 minutes, I think. I hope. I don't want to get punished. Thanks for watching.